It was just another Friday night. I was 19, working my usual shift at the corner store in my neighborhood. Nothing unusual ever happened there. Most nights were quiet, sometimes too quiet. I remember walking in at 11:30 p.m., flipping the sign to open, and feeling the familiar hum of the fluorescent lights above. The aisles were empty, the streets outside dim and silent, just the occasional car passing by. I had been working there for a few months, so I knew the routine. Stock shelves, tidy the coolers, make small talk with a few late-night customers. It was boring, but it paid the bills. That night, I had grabbed my keys, unlocked the door, and flicked on the lights like I always did. The sound of the door chime echoed in the empty store. Everything looked exactly as it should: chips neatly stacked, candy bars in their boxes, refrigerators humming. I started straightening the snack aisle when I noticed something that made me pause. A single chair was pulled out from behind the counter, even though I was sure no one had been back there yet. It wasn't out of place enough to scream danger, but something about it felt wrong. Like the store wasn't entirely empty. My stomach tightened for a second, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I had just left it that way the night before. I moved on to the drink cooler and began refilling soda cans. That's when I heard it, a faint scrape from the back aisle. At first, I thought it was just a box falling or maybe a mouse. But the sound repeated, soft and deliberate, like someone was stepping lightly on the floor. I froze and listened. The store was quiet again. Nothing. I told myself I was imagining it. I'd been up late working. Maybe I was tired. I glanced at the reflection in the glass door of the cooler. Nothing. Just the rows of drinks. And yet, there was a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly. Nothing. Just the shadows between the aisles. My pulse started to pick up. Normally, I would ignore these little things, but something about the way the lights flickered, the way the shadows seemed too long tonight, set my nerves on edge. It was still a normal night. Just me, the store, and the quiet streets outside. But even in that calm, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. A sense that someone or something was somewhere just beyond my sight, waiting. The kind of feeling that makes your skin prickle and your breath catch in your throat. I had worked alone many nights before, but this time it was different. I had this strange, sinking feeling that I was being watched, and that whatever it wasn't going to leave quietly. By the time I turned to check the back aisle, I had no idea what I was about to find. And that's when I realized the store was not as empty as I thought. The corner store I worked at wasn't fancy. Just a small, single-story building tucked between a gas station and a laundromat. Inside, it was narrow, with 3 main aisles and a cooler lining the back wall. The shelves were stocked with snacks, drinks, and the usual essentials: canned soup, bread, milk. There was a small counter near the front with a cash register and a phone that never rang. A security camera hung in the corner, though it didn't always work properly. I'd grown used to the hum of the lights and the soft buzzing of the refrigerators. It was almost comforting in its monotony. It was around midnight when my shift started. Outside, the streetlights flickered intermittently, and the occasional car drove past, breaking the silence. There wasn't much activity in the neighborhood this late. Most people were home, asleep, or already out of town. I liked these quiet nights because it gave me time to organize shelves, clean, and restock items without being rushed. There was a calm, almost empty feeling in the store, and I often found it relaxing, or at least I used to. I had taken the job to help pay for college. I was studying part-time and needed the late-night shifts because I had classes during the day. The store owner, Mr. Thompson, trusted me to handle nights alone, and he rarely checked in. He'd left me to it hundreds of times before, so being alone wasn't unusual. Tonight, I had no coworkers, no friends around, just me and the fluorescent lights. My routine was simple: keep the store organized, help any customer who came in, and make sure nothing went wrong. For the first hour, it was completely normal. I stocked the chips, straightened the candy, wiped down the counter. There was the faint smell of cleaning solution mixed with the lingering scent of soda and hot coffee from earlier in the day. I heard the occasional hum from the street light outside, the distant sound of a car engine, and the soft rumble of refrigerators. Nothing out of place. I Even took a minute to make myself a cup of coffee behind the counter. It was peaceful in that quiet way that only late-night shifts can feel. But then I noticed small, subtle things that fell off. A box that had been neatly stacked in the storage room was slightly shifted. The sound of the fridge seemed louder in certain corners, and the shadows in the aisles looked sharper than usual. Normally, I dismiss these things, chalking them up to fatigue or my imagination. But tonight it was different. Every time I turned a corner, I thought I caught movement in the reflection of the glass doors. I told myself it was just my own reflection, or a flicker of the fluorescent lights. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't until I heard the soft scraping sound from the back aisle, almost like someone dragging their foot, that I realized the night might not be as ordinary as it had started. There was no one there yet, or so I thought. After the initial calm, things started to feel off. It began with small sounds I couldn't immediately identify. A soft tapping, like someone dragging a finger along the shelves, echoed from the far aisle. I froze and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was probably just the wind rattling the door, or maybe a stray box settling in the back room. I went to check the candy aisle, trying to appear casual, and everything looked normal. But the shadows in the corners seemed darker than usual, stretching in ways that made me uneasy. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then again, and I noticed how the reflection in the cooler glass seemed slightly delayed, like it wasn't quite mirroring my movements correctly. I shook my head. I was tired. I had worked late shifts before. This was just a quiet night, that's all. Then came the footsteps. At first, I thought they were in my head, soft, almost like someone walking on tiptoe. They were coming from the back aisle near the storage room. I paused, holding my breath. The sound stopped when I moved toward them. I glanced behind me. The store was empty. But the uneasy feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Every instinct I had was telling me that something wasn't right. I returned to the front to check the register and noticed a chair slightly moved from its usual spot near the counter. I hadn't left it that way. It was subtle, almost insignificant, but my gut twisted. It was like the store itself was watching me. The hum of the refrigerators seemed louder now, almost like a low growl beneath the normal buzzing. I tried to focus on straightening shelves, telling myself I was overreacting. Then I saw it, a shadow flickering across the back aisle. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. Just the dim aisles and the stacked boxes. I felt my pulse quicken. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a trick of the light, maybe my tired eyes playing games. But then came the breathing. Soft, deliberate, coming from somewhere near the storage room. Not heavy, not loud, just steady, slow, almost patient. I held still, straining to listen. It stopped when I stepped closer, but my heart was racing. The store felt different now. Smaller. Claustrophobic. I could feel the air pressing down on me, the shadows in the corners seeming closer than they should be. Every instinct I had screamed that I wasn't alone. I started walking slowly toward the back, trying to stay calm, trying to convince myself it was a delivery or someone from the neighborhood. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger with every step. Every reflective surface, cooler doors, the polished counter, seemed to hold the possibility of someone just beyond my sight. I caught a glimpse of movement again, and this time I knew it wasn't my imagination. Something was there, waiting, watching. I backed away slightly, telling myself to call the owner if needed, but my phone was on the counter, too far to reach without crossing the open floor. I realized that for the first time, I felt vulnerable. The store, normally my safe space, now felt like a trap. And the longer I stayed, the more I felt that whatever was out there, it wasn't going to leave on its own. The quiet, the shadows, the subtle noises, they all added up to one thing. Someone or something was in the store with me. And it wasn't friendly. By this point, I knew I wasn't imagining things. The noises had grown clearer, more deliberate. Footsteps, soft, measured, echoed from the back aisle, then stopped whenever I moved toward them. I could hear a faint rustle, like someone shifting boxes or adjusting their position. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't alone, and the store, once familiar and safe, now felt like a cage. I tried to calm myself. It's just someone hiding, maybe drunk or messing around, I muttered under my breath. But the way the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, the way the fluorescent lights flickered, it all felt too intentional. I wasn't just being watched, it felt like someone was tracking me, step by step, waiting for me to make the wrong move. Then I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A dark figure crouched low behind the snack display, shifting slightly as I approached. I froze. My stomach dropped. This wasn't random. Someone was here, hiding, waiting. I could see just enough to know he was a man. Tall, thin, his face obscured by shadows. He wasn't making a sound, but I could feel his eyes on me, tracking me across the floor. I backed away slowly, my hands shaking. The open aisles left me exposed. Every instinct told me to run, but I also knew the doors were too far and too visible. If he wanted me, he could intercept me in seconds. I felt trapped. Every shelf, every counter, every corner suddenly felt like a potential hiding place for him, or a place I could get cornered. I tried to call out, but my voice came out quieter than I expected. Hello? Is someone there? No reply. Only silence, punctuated by the occasional scrape of a shoe across the linoleum. The sound was deliberate now, closer, circling around the aisles. He wasn't just hiding, he was stalking. I moved toward the back room, hoping to lock myself in or find a phone. The man mirrored me, keeping his distance but never letting me out of sight. The tension was unbearable. My chest tightened. The lights flickered again, and for a moment, I thought I saw him step into the aisle, just barely, before ducking back into the shadows. I couldn't tell if he was testing me or planning something worse. Every instinct screamed at me to act. I ducked behind a shelf, crouched low, trying to stay silent. My pulse was racing, my ears straining for the smallest sound. Every shuffle, every soft footstep made me jump. He was close now, too close for comfort. I could feel the heat of his presence, even though I couldn't see him clearly. The store no longer felt like a workplace. It felt like a trap, a maze designed to keep me exposed while he circled, waiting for the right moment. I realized then that if I stayed, I might not get another chance to escape. The subtle noises, the fleeting shadows, the sense of being hunted, they all made it clear. This man wasn't just passing through. He had been here, hidden, and he wasn't leaving without a confrontation. I had to move. But moving meant risking being seen. And I had no idea what he would do if I gave him the chance. I finally made my move. Heart hammering, I edged toward the back room, hoping to lock the door and have a moment to breathe. That's when I saw him clearly. The man stepped out from behind the snack display, his face partially hidden by a hood, but I could see the glint of something in his hand, a metal crowbar. My stomach dropped. He wasn't just hiding. He was prepared. I froze for a second, trying to think. My first instinct was to run, but the door was at the far end of the room, and the aisle between us felt endless. He started moving toward me slowly, deliberately. No words, just heavy, quiet steps that made my skin crawl. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, but my body felt frozen with fear. I decided to sprint. My shoes scraped against the linoleum as I ran toward the storage door, knocking over a box in my haste. The sound made him pause for a second, then he moved faster, closing the distance. I could hear his breathing now, steady, deliberate, close enough that I could almost feel it. I reached the door, slammed my hand against the lock, and it wouldn't turn. At first, my fingers fumbled over the knob, panic rising. Finally it clicked. I shoved the door closed and leaned against it, pressing my body against the wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. The man banged on the door, hard, sending boxes rattling to the floor. I could hear the scrape of his crowbar against the wood. I was trapped. Completely trapped. My phone was back at the counter. No way to call anyone. I crouched low behind some shelves in the storage room, listening. The banging continued for a few seconds, then stopped. Silence. My chest was pounding. I stayed still, barely breathing, trying to convince myself he had left. I didn't hear anything for what felt like minutes, but I knew better. He was still in the store, somewhere, waiting for me to make a mistake. Then came the faint creak of footsteps outside the door. I hugged the shelves, listening to every sound. The doorknob rattled. He was testing it. My mind raced. I needed a way out. I spotted a small window near the top of the storage room, just big enough to slip through. Hard in my throat, I climbed up, pushed it open, and slid out onto the fire escape. I ran into the street, barefoot, my shoes left behind in the chaos, and finally saw the flashing lights of a patrol car turning onto the block. I screamed for help, pointing back toward the store. The man had disappeared into the shadows. The police rushed inside, but by the time they reached the aisles, the store was empty. I collapsed onto the curb, shaking and gasping. The officers questioned me, took my statement, and searched the area. They found signs he had been inside for a long time, footprints in the dust, a backpack filled with tools, and the crowbar. But no one. He had vanished without a trace. I had escaped, but the image of him standing there, watching me, crowbar in hand, stayed with me. Every time I think about it, I feel the same cold weight in my stomach. I had run, I had survived, but he was still out there. The police finished searching the store and dusted for fingerprints, but they didn't find much beyond the man's tracks and the backpack filled with tools. I thought that was the end of it, that he had just been some random intruder looking for an easy score. But a few days later, I got a call from Detective Harris. He asked me to come down to the station. I felt uneasy, but I went anyway. When I arrived, he motioned me into a small interview room. On the table was the man's backpack, the crowbar, and some personal items he had left behind. There was a photo tucked into one of the pockets. I picked it up, and my stomach dropped. The photo showed the inside of the store, taken from one of the security cameras. But the unsettling part wasn't that. It was me. Or rather, me, and the exact spot where I had been crouched behind the shelves. He had been in the store the entire time, watching me even when I thought I had been alone. Every moment I had been restocking, every time I thought I heard footsteps or shadows, he had been there, silently observing. Detective Harris looked at me seriously. "We think he was scouting the store for weeks before you noticed him," he said. "We found receipts in his backpack showing he had come in during the day, posing as a customer, taking mental notes of where the cameras were, where the exits were. He knew the store layout before tonight." I couldn't believe it. The man hadn't just been some random intruder. He had been planning this. Watching me. Studying me. Every small noise, every shadow I thought was my imagination, had been him moving around, testing how I would react. My safe little routine, the quiet night, I thought I controlled. It had all been under his control. There was one more thing. In the backpack, tucked beneath the crowbar, was a notebook. Flipping through it, I saw entries with my name, my shifts, even notes about my habits, what I would do when restocking, how I moved through the aisles, where I would hide if someone entered.
He had known me.
Watched me. And the realization hit me harder than any crowbar ever could. He could come back, and next time, he wouldn't make mistakes. Detective Harris assured me they were doing everything they could to find him, but they had no identity, no criminal record, nothing. Just a man who had carefully prepared, studied, and almost trapped me in the store. I walked out of the station in a daze. The city felt the same, the streets quiet and ordinary, but I knew the truth now. It wasn't random. It wasn't luck. I had been hunted. And the worst part? He had already chosen his next target. I didn't know who it would be, but I knew it wouldn't be long before he returned somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere unsuspecting. It's been weeks since that night at the corner store, but I still can't shake it. Every time I walk past a shop late at night, I feel the same cold weight in my stomach. The streets look ordinary, the lights flicker normally, the air feels normal, but my mind keeps replaying the shadows, the soft footsteps, the way he had watched me without me ever knowing. I went back to the store once during the day to get a sense of closure. Everything looked fine. The aisles were tidy, the shelves stocked, the hum of the refrigerators normal. But when I stood in the spot where I had crouched behind the shelves, I felt exposed, vulnerable. The corner that had hidden me now seemed like an open invitation. I realized that night wasn't just a fluke. He had planned it carefully, and there was no reason to think he wouldn't try again somewhere else. Sometimes I catch myself imagining him in other stores, other quiet corners, watching someone else the same way he watched me. I can picture him pacing silently behind aisles, crouching behind displays, studying his next victim. That thought keeps me awake at night. The idea that someone so methodical could slip in unnoticed, that he could be anywhere, waiting, is terrifying. I've started locking doors earlier at home, double-checking windows, and walking streets with my head on a swivel. But it's not just paranoia. Every instinct tells me that this isn't over. There's a part of me that expects a call from the police, or a knock on my door. Not because they caught him, but because he's moved on, continuing the pattern, finding the next quiet place, the next unsuspecting person. What's worse is I still don't know who he was. I don't know his face, his name, or where he came from. And I may never. Detective Harris said there were no leads, no fingerprints, no security footage that revealed more than what I had already seen. He vanished completely, leaving behind only memories and that terrifying sense of being hunted. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear footsteps outside my apartment. Soft, measured, deliberate. I check the hallway, the lobby, the street below, and there's nothing. But the feeling doesn't go away. It lingers, like a shadow, like the memory of those cold, calculating eyes in the corner of the store. I wonder if he's still out there, watching, planning, waiting for the right moment. The worst part is, I know I'm not the only one. Somewhere, right now, another quiet shop, another small street, another late-night worker could be feeling that same creeping fear. And that thought keeps me tense, alert, and afraid to be alone at night. I survived that night, but the story didn't end. He didn't make a mistake that night. He just left, waiting for the next opportunity. And sometimes, I can't help but think he's still out there, watching. And maybe, just maybe, he's closer than I think.